Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, everyone, depending on where you're located. Welcome to our Tenzig demo webinar. Hopefully you can hear me well, you can see me. Shout out if you cannot. Wow, we've got 75 people already logged in, so great to meet you all, great to see you all. And I am Michelle. I handle the marketing in the Phoenix, Arizona Tenzig office. I am the marketing manager, and we are Tenzig Technology, a leading thin and zero client hardware and software provider for over 17 years now for cloud workspaces and virtual desktops. So again, welcome. Thank you for showing up today. We appreciate your attendance and your enthusiasm. We're glad to help you here. The webinar is Linux or Windows, which way to go for AVD or Windows 365 Cloud PC. And joining me today, I'm very excited to bring to you Stewart Hayles, our Pre-Sales Engineer. Hi, Stewart. Good afternoon, right?
Yeah, good morning, good afternoon, good evening, everybody. I'm Stewart Hayles, Pre-Sales Engineer based in the UK, covering the EMEA region.
Good to see you, Stewart. And of course, our Chief Technology Officer, the one and only Kevin Greenway. Good morning.
Hi, everybody.
Yes.
Yeah, good morning, good afternoon, good evening, everybody. Thanks for joining us today.
Kevin's joining us here in Phoenix today, but he's also located in our United Kingdom office. So very international. We have people from all over attending the event. We're glad to see you all. Just a few quick mentions before we kick things off and I pass things over to Stewart. There are a variety of marketing handouts in the event there for you, explaining more about Tenzig technology, the products that we're demoing on, what our offerings are and how we differentiate from competitors. Also, the full presentation PDF format. Stewart was so kind, and Kevin as well, to put that together. It's there for you as well. We will have poll questions throughout the event, so feel free to participate. It really helps show us where you are with respect to this topic and related issues. So feel free to participate. You'll see them when they pop on the screen. You are welcome to ask questions as well throughout the event. We'll try to get to your questions off and on as we can, hoping there'll be some time for Q&A at the end, but not to worry. If we don't get to you, I promise you that is my task, to follow up and get all these questions answered for you and get back to you. And we are giving out a $200 Amazon gift card. So just by registering and attending, we'll draw that winner and you'll get an email related to who won the prize. In addition to that, that email will also provide for you the recorded video. So don't panic. Even if you feel like the PDF didn't give you enough information, you'll be able to have the recorded video, and you'll find it on Tenzig social media as well, our YouTube channel, and we have a video gallery on our website at tenzig.com. So without further ado, I think I've covered all the major points. I'm going to turn things over to you, Stewart, and I'm going to bug out here in the camera, and Kevin, and just let me know when you're ready for any questions or poll questions.
Thanks, Michelle.
Thanks for the introduction and housekeeping there then, Michelle. And again, a big hi from me. Welcome to everybody joining us on today's session. So as Michelle indicated, our webcast topic for today is which way to go for AVD or Windows 365 Cloud PC. And after an initial introduction to Tenzig, I will be discussing briefly the reason for focusing on AVD and Windows 365 Cloud PC. Kevin and I will then both follow this with a Q&A discussion session focused on Tenzig endpoints, with questions structured around experiences Tenzig have encountered with customers and the questions from them over the past few years with AVD in particular. So we are looking at this from a thin or zero client endpoint perspective, and this is because we have found since AVD was released back in 2019 that there is plenty of documentation, articles and videos available online from various sources for setting up an AVD environment within Azure. But when it comes to actually accessing these environments from a client, very little guidance or exposure as to the pros or cons of different operating systems used, or best practice for configuration and setup, especially for thin or zero clients, which are more commonly used for accessing various VDI platforms. So after this Q&A session, time permitting, we will have two pre-recorded live demonstration videos. And the first video will demonstrate our best-selling Linux-based zero-client operating system, NOS-M, being used simply to connect to an AVD environment. The second video will demonstrate AVD being used on a Windows 10 IoT Enterprise device, and in this example we will show how to set it up for a Kiosk way of working using the shell launcher, and also potentially show Teams being optimized on the endpoint, again time permitting. So if we don't get time to show these videos today at all, then they will be made available afterwards for viewing. So without further ado, to gauge our audience better, let's kick off with a couple of poll questions. Can you display poll question 1, please, Michelle?
I sure can. Give me one moment. I'm coming with the launch.
Will be.
All right.
Are you
Hopefully.
using Microsoft AVD or Windows 365 Cloud PC? So the answers we've got are A, yes, B, no, C, planning for the future. And I'll just give you a few moments to answer this question. And as Michelle said earlier, we do appreciate any participation in these polls.
Yes, we're getting good participation. Let's just give it another few seconds. Okay, I think I'm gonna go ahead and close that out if you're ready, Stuart, and I believe I can show the results. All right, Stuart, 50% say yes, 26% say no, and 24%, yeah.
So following that then, can we just go directly into poll question 2, please then, Michelle?
Sure.
And this question is, are you using Tenzig thin or zero clients already? And similar answers as before, A, yes, B, no, or C, planning to in the future.
There we go. It should be up for everybody now. People are still responding. We have a nice active audience. That's great.
Excellent.
Give it a few more seconds. I think we're ready to close. %, yes, 25% no, and 27%
again. Again, great participation. So thanks very much, everybody, for participating in those questions. So I think we can move on now. So for those who may not be aware of Tenzig before today, or what we do, we are a solely focused thin and zero client vendor and are specialized in Microsoft technologies amongst other VDI and end user computing platforms and products. We're headquartered in Phoenix, Arizona, with our EMEA office based in Leicester, UK. Where we differ from competitors is that we are solely focused, and our staff are skilled in Microsoft technologies, among others, through training and certification, and we take our customer service through all areas of the business to the next level. We are also nimble enough to keep ahead of the development curve, thanks to our in-house R&D and support teams. Tenzig is built and grown upon excellent customer service, and this is why customers buy from Tenzig and return to us again and again, as you can see from testimonials on our website. So now you know a little more about Tenzig, it's also important to cover briefly why Tenzig. So this is a question we're often asked as an endpoint vendor. It's much more than just looking at the endpoint as far as its hardware specification. This is relevant very much for our partners and MSPs who want to be able to offer their customers a pain-free option as far as endpoints for attachment to Azure Virtual Desktop. So some key words here on this slide are free and uncomplicated. Our hassle-free evaluation or trial program is available to all customers. You can take a pick from our wide range of endpoints and test them against your own common type of users, with most critical or demanding requirements to ensure they are ideally suited for each use case at no risk financially. We also have enterprise cloud management with the Tenzig Manager, which is free with no hidden ties in usage. Our range of x86-based thin and zero clients are all equipped with a minimum 3-year advanced exchange warranty, meaning on the rare occasions we need to, we ship replacements ahead of you returning faulty hardware to base. And this can be extended through further software and hardware support plans. And finally, we do offer free product training tailored to your individual requirements, which is extended with access to our certified sales and support teams, including pre and post-sales support. The main reason we are focusing today on AVD and Windows 365 Cloud PC in particular is due to an increasing trend we have seen in interest from prospective Tenzig customers considering AVD or Windows 365 Cloud PC. So it seemed a good opportunity to demonstrate to the community how easy it is to access from a Tenzig device using either our Zero Client Operating System NOS-M or a Windows 10 IoT Enterprise endpoint, whilst also highlighting some of the pros and cons of each. There are various resources for market research available online looking at VDI and DaaS in detail, but some key figures to highlight are that Gartner predicts that by 2023, some 30% of existing on-premise VDI users will access a workspace in the cloud using a DaaS solution of some sort. Secondly, the annual VDI Like a Pro survey, although limited in scope, identifies that of those surveyed, 26.92% are currently using or actively considering Azure Virtual Desktop for DaaS, which is leading the way over other cloud platforms. And thirdly, since AVD was released as Windows Virtual Desktop back in 2019, it's no secret as to the sheer amount of employees who were sent home back in early 2020 at the beginning and during the COVID pandemic. And post-pandemic hybrid working will remain with us for the foreseeable future to help the virtual desktop market grow by an average of 18.1% year on year, with organisations focusing on simpler administration, cost savings and improved productivity to the end of the decade. So we mainly see interest for AVD deployments, but there is also more inquiries coming through now for Windows 365 Cloud PC. The main differentiators between the two platforms are pricing, where Windows 365 Cloud PC provides a predictable pricing model with a fixed per user per month amount. AVD, on the other hand, is a consumption-based pricing model, looking at resource usage for CPUs, RAM, disks, networks, graphics, etc., making it much more difficult to predict and budget without strict reporting and controls in place. AVD offers flexibility and scale for enterprise with its multi-session OS options and individual published app access, fully managed through Azure and controlled with role-based access controls. You can also have hybrid environments with third-party integration for provisioning through the likes of Citrix or VMware, whilst Windows 365 Cloud PC is a personalized desktop as a service solution, having a simplified deployment model using Microsoft's Endpoint Manager. So I think it's a good time to go to the next poll question. Can we display poll question 3, please, Michelle?
We certainly can. Let me get that for everybody.
And the question for this one is, do your current endpoints support your AVD or Windows 365 Cloud PC requirements? With answers A, yes, B, no, C, not sure, or D, not applicable.
Okay, it looks like people are answering.
That's great.
Let's give it a few more seconds. All right, let's see what our responses are. We have 42% at yes, 23% at no, 26% not sure, and 9% not applicable.
That's a positive result based on the previous poll question, so pleased with that. So let's briefly cover our endpoints available for AVD and Windows 365 Cloud PC deployments. We do offer both Linux, as in NOS or PeakOS, and Windows 10 IoT-based endpoints. And there is a wide range of different form factor options for all use cases, powered by either Intel or AMD processors. You can find full details on all of our endpoints and specifications through our website at www.tenzig.com. But if you wish to speak to someone directly about your requirements and the best endpoint to fit your needs, then please get in touch with us using the contact details at the end of the presentation, and we'll be more than happy to assist you further. So Tenzig have 3 in-house developed Linux-based operating systems. We have NOS, which is our best-selling Zero Client Operating System, with variants for all the major VDI platform vendors. There's also PeakOS, which is a more traditional thin client operating system, allowing for multiple connection types from a single device. Both of these are available on any Tenzig endpoint. Repurpose is effectively PeakOS, but designed to be used on third-party clients, such as PCs or laptops. And then we have Windows 10 IoT Enterprise available, which we are now using the 2021 LTSC release. And now I would like to bring Kevin back into the session as it is discussion time.
Thanks for that, Stuart. And as you say, we'll push on now with the topic at hand. So I think as you've touched on over the course of the past 2 years, we've spoken to an increasing number of prospects and customers who are switching to AVD and more recently Cloud PC. And this includes customers switching to AVD and Cloud PC from things like traditional desktops and laptops, but also customers who are leaning towards either solution, who are adopting from, say, VDI and traditional VDI solutions. And as you touched on with both examples, this has really accelerated due to the pandemic. And during this time, we've listened to customer requirements, and from an endpoint perspective, sort of what is relevant to a deployment based on the customer and user demands. And really the purpose of today is to try and summarize the most commonly asked questions and our experience with everybody today, in the hope it can guide the audience through selecting the right endpoint based on the most common needs. So with that, let's go towards the first question.
Okay.
So starting out with, what clients for AVD and Windows 365 Cloud PC are generally available, Stuart?
So there are various clients available for accessing AVD or Windows 365 Cloud PC workspaces, and you can use the link at the bottom of this slide to read more information on any individual client. But for the purposes of Tenzig Endpoints and today's session, we're going to mainly focus on 2 clients, and those are the Windows Desktop client for Windows 10 IoT endpoints, and also Linux for NOS or PeakOS endpoints.
That's great. And a question that, again, we commonly get asked is, what's the main difference then between the Linux and the Windows clients for AVD and Windows 365 Cloud PC?
Sure. So the Windows client uses a native MSRDC client maintained and released by Microsoft versus Linux, which is developed by Tenzig from the RD Core SDK.
Yeah, and you touched specifically there on the RD Core SDK and that running in Linux. And based on this and the Windows version leveraging the native Windows client, is there a difference in features between Windows and Linux?
Yes, there are, Kevin. So let's briefly go over that on the next couple of slides. So as you can see from this slide and the next one, both platforms are feature rich, but as it stands, the widely requested feature of Teams optimization is currently only offered in the Windows Desktop client. And that is a mature implementation now, with having been available for almost 2 years. You can use the link at the bottom of this slide to compare the features among all the clients on Microsoft's documentation portal. Another key feature included in the Windows client is USB redirection support, and I'll be explaining more on this later, but as you can see on this table, support with RD Core SDK is somewhat more limited. But the good news here is that the feature set is improving all the time, as you can see.
Yeah, and exactly as you say, it is changing and improving all the time. And good to see, the 2 features called out there as far as coming soon, the camera redirection and printer redirection, which again, we've responded to customer requests there and leverage sort of these new and upcoming features in the SDK. So maybe for the audience's benefit, you could just briefly describe the purpose of camera redirection and printer redirection, if you wouldn't mind.
Sure. So with the camera redirection, this can be used for forwarding webcams into the AVD or Windows 365 session. This allows the users to use a webcam in session where the camera is rendered locally on the client's endpoint. So this is compressed and then forwarded into the session. The camera can be used for scenarios including Microsoft Teams or Zoom, similar to the functionality seen with RTAB in VMware or RTME with Citrix. Printer redirection, on the other hand, leverages CUPS locally on the Linux client and redirects a connected printer from the local client into the AVD or Windows 365 Cloud PC session. So that works in a similar way to the Mac OS remote desktop client.
Not to interrupt here, Stuart, but we do have somebody asking a quick question, if I can interject. To backtrack just a little bit, what is the difference between the Linux OS's NOS versus PCOS?
Yeah, so NOS is our zero client operating system. So it is tailored specifically for one particular platform. So we've got NOS-V for VMware, we've got NOS-C for Citrix, and then we've got NOS-M for Microsoft technologies, including AVD, Windows 365 Cloud PC, and also traditional RDSH environments. Whereas
And I think that question was well timed, wasn't it? Because I think we're dipping into that right here, where we actually talk about the differences between the different flavors as well. So
yeah, that's right.
Thank you.
So,
okay, great.
So yeah, we can go through this slide, Michelle, in more detail on each of those items, which will answer the question from the original poster.
Perfect, thank you.
So yeah, so we covered just before the features that are available between the Windows and the Linux client, and as that question alluded to, we'll now sort of explain the different platforms that it's available on, as well as Stewart then explaining the look and feel differences between the Linux and the Windows Tenzig endpoints variants.
Sure. So NOS and PeakOS, there are some similarities between them because they are both Linux-based operating systems. As just mentioned previously, NOS-M is our zero client operating system. So this is tailored specifically for Microsoft technologies, but it does include the RD Core SDK. It's designed to be simple in its configuration and management, and also where user accessibility is concerned. And it can be configured quickly straight out of the box with a 3-step simple GUI, and it's simple to lock down user interface. Configuration and ongoing management of these devices can be performed via the Tenzig Manager. Whereas with PeakOS, which is our more traditional thin client operating system, this offers additional features, but still includes the RD Core SDK for AVD and Windows 365 accessibility. So this allows for multiple connection types. So potentially you could connect to other VDI platforms from PeakOS at the same time as AVD or Windows 365. And also this gives you the ability to be able to access web-based applications with its built-in browsers as connection types also. At the same time though, it still offers similarity to NOS in offering simple configuration, management and user accessibility as a user experience. Some of the additional features that you do get with PeakOS, for example, is separate desktop modes. And with that, what I mean is different user experiences. So you can run PeakOS in a kiosk fashion, similar to NOS, but you can also run it in a window mode, where you just see a window which displays the different connection types available for you to use. Alternatively, you can use it as a basic or a familiar Linux desktop device, which has got desktop shortcuts and a program menu there as well. Configuration of PeakOS devices can still be maintained by the Tenzig Manager in a similar fashion to the NOS devices as well.
Yeah, thanks for that, Stewart. And as you demonstrated here, there are some key differences as you've called out with NOS and PeakOS, which again I think are worthy to call out for the audience, because this is often, you know, something that we qualify with new prospects to understand, you know, where either platform is most suitable. So again, just to reiterate, NOS is typically used as a zero client for connecting, in this case, exclusively to either AVD or Cloud PC. We don't focus on the topic here, but the M build of NOS also does support RDS connections as well. It does contain a small footprint. It includes, as you called out, the simplified configuration and a fast boot speed, and importantly, an intuitive look and feel for login and connectivity, whereas PeakOS, on the other hand, provides a fuller Linux-based OS, and that includes further configuration options, again, as you called out, a traditional full desktop. So again, if users want to be able to access shortcuts to browsers, as well as, say, an AVD connection, as well as kiosk options for supporting multiple connection types. So after that, maybe you could just sort of compare then how that compares on the Windows front, if you wouldn't mind, Stewart.
Sure, Kevin. So we do cover Windows in more detail slightly later on, but the Windows equivalent includes the Windows native remote desktop client, MSRDC, for AVD and Windows 365 Cloud PC in the stock image. The image can be customized using some of the supplied Tenzig tools to leverage things like the show launcher, which places the Windows client into a kiosk look and feel, similar to the pictured NOS64 image as seen here. Alternatively, you can use a pre-configured account called ThinClient User, which is a lockdown user account with restricted access to features of the Windows OS. We're giving users access to the desktop and locally installed applications. Management for Windows devices can also be performed still by the Tenzig Manager.
All right, that's great.
I have one more question. If we have time I'm just going to interject one more question here. I know we have a lot to cover, so we might have to hold the rest to the end. But related to the topic that we just covered, question: if my unit comes shipped with NOS, can I migrate to PCOS? And is there a license cost for these changes?
Yeah, so
go ahead, Stu.
Yeah, you can convert. It depends on which way you're going though, which path you're taking. So if you're going from a Windows device to a Linux device, it's much more simpler. You can just download. We can provide the images to NOS-M, NOS-V, NOS-C, and you can then put them onto the device itself. But if you're going from a Linux device to a Windows device, then you need to take into account some considerations, because by default, the standard specification for a Windows device is greater than a Linux device in terms of RAM and disk storage. So there might be a cost in upgrading those parts of the hardware, but then also the cost involved with software license for putting Windows on that device as well.
And then just to add a bit further onto that question as well, you can switch between NOS and PCOS as well. It does require a reimage, which you can achieve using the Tenzig Manager or a USB restore. But yeah, you can achieve switching between NOS and PCOS through the warranty period of the device, which is typically a 3-year advanced exchange warranty. So I think with that, you know, we've covered the difference between Linux and Windows from a feature perspective. We've covered differences in the look and feel of the different variants of Linux as well as Windows. I think now let's just take into account any additional considerations that we need to think about when deciding between a Linux or Windows-based endpoint, Stuart.
Sure. So some of the things that we normally look into is, as briefly discovered in the feature metrics earlier, the Windows platform will often lead first with new features. So a recent example of this includes MMR for multimedia redirection, which is currently in preview and supported for Windows only. So if you want to be at the leading edge of what's coming in the future, a Windows 10 IoT client is most likely the way forward.
Yeah, and I think that's a really good point. And as you kind of mentioned already, you know, we are seeing these features appear into Linux as well, and over time, you know, for sure it will catch up. But you know, still with AVD in its sort of development phase, continually, Windows at least does offer that little bit greater flexibility at the moment. And with that, you mentioned identifying applications and specific client needs and requirements. Perhaps you could give the audience a couple of examples of common things that we come across there.
Absolutely, Kevin. So some clients plugins exist which have to be installed to the endpoint or client, and these are typically required in order to provide additional offload and optimization functionality. So some examples currently include, as reference, Zoom VDI and Microsoft Teams optimization, both of which require plugins for the encoding and offloading of audio and video on the endpoint. Tenzig are always available to provide assistance and guidance on these aspects.
Yeah, thank you. And peripherals are also referenced on this slide. So I see you call out USB redirection and virtual channels, which again, you know, is often something that doesn't widely get explained. So perhaps again, you could just give the audience explain a little bit about the difference of these two features and maybe their sort of relevance.
Yeah, of course. So USB redirection, which is supported on Windows only, can be used to provide support for USB plug-and-play devices. The USB device is forwarded to the virtual desktop via USB redirection, and the driver installed natively in the virtual desktop. So this can be used as a fallback where the peripheral would be otherwise unsupported in the virtual desktop, whilst virtual channels are a way of leveraging a plugin locally installed on the endpoint, which provides functionality and communication between the endpoint and virtual desktop, often as a way of leveraging an optimized experience. Such drivers require coexistence between, in this case, Microsoft and specifically the MSRDC client team, the vendor providing the plugin, and the endpoint provider, which in our case is Tenzig. So both are supported in Windows-based endpoints and refers back to our point earlier on about flexibility for this particular client.
That's great, and I think the final point on this slide is the point about the familiarity of the Windows user experience. So again, if you wouldn't mind just calling out this particular topic, if that's okay.
Yeah, so this is a really important point, Kevin. So for deployments leveraging published desktops or apps via AVD, providing this via a Windows-based desktop offers a comfortable and familiar user interface for the end user. Furthermore, once subscribed, any available published apps are accessible from the local start menu, and connecting to such apps is delivered seamlessly, so the user can integrate with the app as if it is locally installed. Also, we have the option of any Windows-based apps which may be installed locally. For example, those not necessarily supported via AVD, or those required for backup or disaster recovery scenarios. There's also in the Windows 10 IoT image, the Microsoft Edge and Chrome browser for complete support.
Fantastic, and I guess ever more important, especially again since the pandemic and remote and hybrid working, is management. So again, if you could just sort of take the audience through what management options are available for both the Linux and Windows 10 IoT based endpoints, please.
Okay, so for the Linux endpoints, you're going to be managing them using the Tenzig Manager, and this is our Windows-based centralized management tool, which can be hosted anywhere, including either on-premise or on Azure in the cloud. The Tenzig Manager is included with all Tenzig endpoints and remains 100% free regardless of number of endpoints or features required. It is feature-rich, allowing among other things for fast deployment of endpoints, leveraging templates, managing your devices and maintaining their latest firmware, and for help desks, allowing support technicians to provide remote support through the shadowing feature. For Windows 10 IoT endpoints, you do have more options. So you can manage these devices with Tenzig Manager, allowing you to sysprep devices, backup, restore disk images. Also, you can remotely control functions, including auto logon, the unified write filter and show launcher from here. Alternatively, you can enroll your endpoints to Microsoft Endpoint Manager and use that as well as Intune to manage them. Recently, one of my colleagues, Jason Hudson, did a webcast with Christian Brinkoff from Microsoft on this topic. And if you look at the next slide, I've provided a link to this video on our YouTube channel, as well as a few other videos on there related to endpoint management. So from this slide here, you can use these links to get the videos covering Tenzig Manager, taking you all the way from initial setup through to management and best practices for remote management, etc., when used with Linux devices. And then there's also for Microsoft Endpoint Manager, Intune, Jason's videos and his collaboration video with Christian here also.
Yeah, and as we've said, the management piece is really important to the overall solution, isn't it? And I think again, it's one of those points that's really worth just calling out again to the audience in terms of the types of examples we've seen. So as you touched on, Tenzig Manager is inclusive and it allows centralized management and configuration for both Linux and Windows-based endpoints. And as you'll touch on later, it also offers remote management of Tenzig endpoints all for free. And to your point around Intune and MEM, we've had a lot of interest from customers around this area. And specifically a couple of examples here is where there's already a vested interest in Intune and MEM. For example, a lot of customers already have this wrapped into their Microsoft subscription. And customers are often already sort of bought into these tools, as in Intune and MEM, for managing other clients within their entire ecosystem. So it just makes sense from a single pane of glass point of view to use these same tools. So I guess the key to this topic here is that we can give customers ultimately the flexibility to manage the Tenzig clients using a combination of either Tenzig Manager and or Intune and MEM.
Quick
you're right,
question
Kevin.
here. Oh, sorry, excuse me. Quick question here, guys, on the manager, Tenzig manager. A question is, how often is it updated? Where can they find, where can they find the updates? And if they're needing any support, how do they get that? So three-part quick question. Okay.
Yeah, so great question. The Tenzig manager, as Stuart's touched on, is free. You can download it from the website at tenzig.com/manager. The point around updating, it's generally updated anywhere between sort of every 3 to 6 months as far as the website's concerned. You'll also find the release notes on there. I don't know if there was another part of the question, Michelle, but hopefully that covers it.
I think they just were asking if they had any issues, where to get support, but I think they're going to cover that at the end as well.
Yeah, sure. So as far as support's concerned, we do have support teams available here in the US as well as in the UK as well. And the final slide at the end, we'll put up some links in order to contact the Tenzig support team.
Thank you.
Great question. So I think we are ready for poll question 4 then, please, Michelle.
Fantastic. Let's get to that.
And this question will be for, are you using MEM/Intune to manage your Windows devices already? Answers A, yes. B, no. C, not applicable, or potentially D, planning for the future. Again, we'll just give you a few moments to have a think about where you are with this management solution.
Sounds good. Looks like a lot of people are completing the question, and we have a lot of people holding on. I think excited for the videos as well. All right, I'm gonna go ahead and close this one out. 36% yes, 36% no. Oh, interesting. And 29% planning for the future.
That is interesting.
Yeah.
So yeah, thanks for good participation there.
So we've actually already talked about this, but it is the next topic in hand, which is really talking about how we can remotely manage both Linux and Windows-based endpoints through the Tenzig manager. So maybe you could just explain briefly to the audience, Stu, the remote management capability within Tenzig manager.
Sure. So remote management capability is available by leveraging our cloud connector, which is a component of the Tenzig manager. And this creates a bi-directional SSL tunnel, allowing for secure communication over the internet. This provides businesses an integrated strategy for remote management of employees and endpoints, all at no extra cost, since the tool is inclusive to Tenzig endpoints. The management tool can again be installed either on premise or on Azure in the cloud, as you can see from this diagram here. Tenzig endpoints rely on a cloud agent to work with the cloud connector of the Tenzig manager. So for Linux devices, this is built in natively to the firmware, but with Windows endpoints, it is performed by the XTC agent application, which again is included in our stock Windows images.
I think we've got a slight pause on the slide here. Yeah, perfect. So yeah, this has been really good so far. Thanks, Stuart. And this is our sort of famous cover the elephant in the room slide. You know, it's a discussion point that often gets brought up when we talk about Windows thin clients. So really, the next sort of section that we're going to look to cover for Stuart is importantly things about Windows updates, security on Windows 10 IoT based thin clients, and also how we can provide a kiosk look and feel, sort of similar to what the demonstration that we gave earlier on the NOS platform running Linux. So Stu, if you could take that through, please, just sort of starting first with the Windows updates, that'd be great.
Sure, Kevin. So this is probably one of the most important questions and one we get the most questions about. So to begin with, let's focus on Windows updates. So with Windows 10 IoT Enterprise, it's not meant to be used in the same way as your normal Windows 10 Pro PCs and laptops, for example, insofar as it is meant to be used for specialized systems, such as those that control medical equipment, point of sale systems, and ATMs, which often require a longer servicing option because of their purpose. These devices typically perform a single task and don't need feature updates as frequently as other devices in the organization. In Tenzig's use case, we are primarily using it for accessing an additional virtual desktop environment, whether it is a solution on-premise or in the cloud, whilst gaining the advantages of still using a Windows device, such as the user interface familiarity, peripheral driver support, and enhanced feature set that comes with AVD or Windows 365 desktop by using a Windows-to-Windows connection, as discussed earlier. So for these fixed purpose devices, we recommend a long-term servicing channel, which the Tenzig Windows 10 IoT devices are. And since it's more important that these devices be kept as stable and secure as possible, rather than up to date with UI changes, the LTSC servicing model prevents Windows 10 IoT Enterprise LTSC devices from receiving the usual feature updates and provides only critical updates, security hotfixes, or driver updates to ensure that devices' current security stays up to date. With this in mind, quality updates are still immediately available to Windows 10 IoT Enterprise LTSC clients, but customers can choose to install them manually or using UWS servicing, for example. And UWS servicing, when enabled, will put the device into a servicing mode. And if UWF is enabled, disable it first, reboot the device, and then log on with a special service account. During this time, Windows updates are downloaded and installed to the client. But once completed, the device will re-enable UWF and reboot the device ready to be used again. By default, automatic Windows updates are disabled on Tenzig Windows devices, so as not to disrupt the user's experience if not acceptable. You can also use Microsoft Endpoint Manager or Intune policies to manage Windows updates on your devices as well. Or finally, use a third-party software update service that some customers do use, such as IBM BigFix as one example. So as regards to security, Windows 10 IoT Enterprise offers a number of built-in security tools that includes the Windows Security Suite for firewall, antivirus, and malware detection, account protection, etc. You can disable this, however, if you do wish to install your own firewall or antivirus software. The unified write filter can be enabled to protect the storage of the endpoint so that when a user logs on to the device, any changes they make during their session is held in a cache, either in RAM or on the disk. So once the device is next rebooted, these changes are lost and the device boots to the state it was in when the UWF was enabled. This helps protect against viruses and malware, including ransomware. Along with the unified write filter, we can also use Hibernate Once Resume Many, which can be used to speed up the shutdown and reboot of a device by taking advantage of the Windows hibernation file. Keyboard filters can be configured if your device is being used as a dedicated Kiosk client, as it may make sense to ensure that key combinations like Control-Alt-Delete do not alter the operation of the device by locking the screen or using Task Manager to close a running application. You can enable keyboard filters for many operating system functions and application level items. Setting up your Windows 10 IoT device using Shell Launcher with a custom shell, more on this on the next slide, but this is useful from a security viewpoint when wanting to restrict access to the underlying Windows operating system to the user and mitigates against possible user-focused security issues. If you don't want to use Windows 10 IoT as a Kiosk device though, you can use a pre-configured Tenzig account called ThinClient User, which we discussed briefly earlier, to give access to a restricted desktop where a lot of functionality is locked down already, but can be modified further using the Tenzig User utility. Tenzig do include a number of utilities in our Endpoints Windows image for aiding in enabling some of these features mentioned here. We have the quick setup wizard for quickly setting up connections and other device specific items. The UWF wizard can be used for configuring UWF, keyboard filters and custom shells. And the Tenzig user utility can be used to restrict user access to areas and features of Windows. So finally, setting up your Windows device as a kiosk for remote desktop client. This can be done on a Windows 10 IoT device using Shell Launcher. So you can configure a Kiosk device to run a specific Windows desktop or universal Windows application as the user interface. And the remote desktop client is a universal Windows application, so it requires shell launcher version 2 or the custom shell host.exe. The application that you specify replaces the default Explorer shell that usually runs when a user logs on. However, a default shell is always configured to allow access back to Explorer.exe in the event of an issue occurring with the custom shell configuration. But either Tenzig's Quick Setup Wizard or UWF Wizards can be used to configure the custom shell itself.
That's all really great info, thanks, Stuart. And I just want to call out again to the audience that it's important again that we appreciate the fact that we've gone through really a ton of information, and again over the course of the past couple of years, we've taken these most commonly requested topics that Stu's covered and placed them onto things like our YouTube channel, as well as including documentation. So allowing you to sort of use that content and really take it from start to end, as well as if you prefer that personal touch to again reach out to us directly. So don't be overwhelmed by the amount of sort of content that we've tried to cram in here over the hour. And if you're looking again for specifics, please feel free to sort of reach out with a question during the webinar, as well as after the session. So again, we'll be throwing up the contact details at the end of the webinar. So I think now, Stu, we're coming on to the demonstration points, aren't we?
That's right, Kevin. Yeah, and thanks for your participation there in the discussions. So now we have finished the Q&A. What I would like to do is move on with the demonstrations, and to begin with, we are going to show a device using the NOS-M operating system being used to connect to an AVD environment. So this will be shown by remotely shadowing a device using our Tenzig Manager server. So I'll just start that video off for you.
We're seeing it, Stuart.
Okay, great. Thanks, Michelle.
Yeah.
I'm going to start this demonstration off in the Tenzig Manager Server MMC console, as you can see here. So we've got a number of devices already registered within the console, and over time these can accumulate, so we can also group them down the left-hand side here so that we can manage those devices more easily by assigning templates and firmware to be able to update those devices automatically. So let's start with our NOS-M endpoint. We're going to right click here and then go to VNC to remotely shadow this device. And if I bring over that window, we can then see the initial configuration wizard for the NOS-M endpoint as it would be once you've taken it out of the box and booted it up on your network. So the first thing we're going to configure on here is the region for where the device will be deployed, which will just set the keyboard configuration and also the time zone information for the device. So I'll just find Great Britain for the UK.
Just maybe mute the
and then we have to specify the date and time. So
just getting some echo.
10:34 currently.
Perfect, thank you.
Press OK. And then it brings us into the application configuration screen, which for NOS-M, because it is a software-based Zero client, it is tailored specifically for Microsoft Virtual Desktop environments. So if you go to the connection type, you've got options here for traditional RDP connectivity, but we're going to leave that set to Windows Virtual Desktop in our case. You've also got the Fee Discovery URL option, so you can choose between the classic fall 2019 environment or the later ARM Spring 2020 release. There's also an option to enter custom URLs, so this might be used at some point in the future, but we may also add additional Fee Discovery URLs if they become available at some point also through firmware updates. So for the moment, I'm going to set that to WVD Classic for my test environment. And then down here, what we can also do to automate the process more for the user, if it is the same user that's going to be logging into the device on a consistent basis, you can specify their username and password details in here already. And then from the initial login screen, which we'll see in a moment, all the user has to do is press the login button to automatically log into their WVD environment. So just for a basic connection, I'm going to leave that disabled. I am going to enter the domain part of my user ID just to make it more simple moving forwards. So just enter that detail in there, and then we're going to leave the settings pretty much default and go back to the initial login screen. So again, it's important to stress from the user's perspective, it is kept as simple as possible in configuration and also in usage. So all they will see when the device boots up is this initial login screen. Behind there is normally a background which you can assign your own wallpaper to, and also you can customize this Microsoft logo here just so that the device is more fit into your corporate image guidelines. Now we can see the domain field is listed here with the parameter we just entered, and along the bottom here we've got options for getting to the power options of the device, also to get back to the main control panel, and then also some more user specific functions. So we could connect to a wireless network, assign our displays to be used with the devices, and set our audio, keyboard and mouse settings depending on the user's requirement. So let's just log in using my username and password. And it will start the authentication process. So I am actually using multi-factor authentication currently. So now it's asking me for my code. So just open up my application and find my code. So enter the details. And once that is authenticated successfully, then you will be displayed with any resources or workspaces and application groups that you've got available to you. So in this instance here, I've just got a single desktop and a number of different applications that can be loaded. So let's just log into this desktop, which, as you can see, the connection is actually quite quick. And there we are. We are now logged in and ready to be able to use our WVD desktop. So let's quickly log back out and I'll just show you some of the other options that are available to us. So let's quit here and back to the control panel, Microsoft Remote Desktop Settings. So what I could also do is specify to cache the username of the last user that logged in on the device if I wanted to. And then we've also got here Windows Virtual Desktop preferences. So I won't go through all of the items we've got configurable right now, but some things just to highlight in here. Autocon if single. So if you only had a single desktop or application resource available to you, when the user logged into the WVD environment, this would automatically be connected to upon connection. You can also specify a desktop or application by name to automatically load. So let's try that then. So I'm going to enter the Excel application to automatically run, but then we've also got this option here to hide the resource list. So from the user's perspective, they won't see that window which we previously just saw that also lists the other applications and the desktops, that resources that we've got available to us. So let's press OK, go back to the login screen and then enter my details again to log in. Again, it will ask me for my authentication. Which has just changed. So now, because we've set that mode to automatically connect to a named application or desktop, it has directly loaded Excel now. So it is a much more automated feel for the end user. Okay, so going back into the control panel then, something else to highlight on that same Windows Virtual Desktop Preferences screen is for user password management. So the actual remote desktop client doesn't allow for the user to be able to modify their password for their account. So what we have done here is, if you enable this allow password change option, if I just press OK and go back to the initial login screen, it adds this additional icon now at the bottom of the window. So if I click this icon, it will basically open up a Kiosk browser to the Azure Change Password web page, so that the user can then modify their password as required. So I won't do that now, but it just gives you an indication of that process. Just quickly then, so that's shown really the functionality of logging into WVD from the NOSM endpoint. Let me just quickly show you. So we've got here also hardware for peripherals that we've got connected to our endpoint, and we've also got system functions here for loading certificates onto the device, also for the cloud management aspect, but also just to lock down the device, we've also got security settings. So in here we can specify a password to restrict access to the full control panel, but still allow the user to be able to have control over certain aspects of their desktop space. So for example, they can manage their displays, also their sound settings. You could specify network properties if they were a home worker and wanted to configure their wireless network, and then power options here as well. So just press OK and then go back to the login screen. So you can see here it has slightly changed. So we've now not got the mouse and keyboard items listed, but the user can still go in and modify these items here. However, if they try and access the full control panel, then it is password protected now, so it has secured the server-side configuration on the client. Now, all of these settings, once they are configured on the client side, can then be exported into the Tenzig manager and deployed to a group, so that when devices are automatically registered into the manager, that template is assigned to them and they will be configured in exactly the same way as this device we've seen here.
Okay, so that gives just one example really of a simple connection to an AVD environment using our Zero Client Operating System NOSM. What I'll do now then is actually take us straight into the second demonstration video for a similar setup using Windows 10 IoT Enterprise. But with this video, I'll just let it get to the point where it's done the connection to the AVD environment. And when it gets into the Teams optimization aspect, we'll end the video at that point. But we will make these videos available after the session so you can view them later on.
So here we are now shadowing our Windows 10 endpoint and logged in as the administrator account. So with the administrator account, by default, it will automatically load the Tenzig Quick Start Wizard, which you can see displayed here, but we're going to skip over that for the moment and log into the remote desktop client so that we can look at Teams and the optimization aspect with that regards to the endpoint. So just open up the remote desktop client and load this desktop, enter my password. And now we are logged in to the WVD admin desktop. So I'm just going to open up here Microsoft Teams. And just to show that we are actually using WVD optimization, let's just go to the About and then Version and just check that that is enabled, which it is. So let's just make a call from Dan to the WVD admin. So the call is coming in. So let's just answer that. And I'll just mute the mic so there's no feedback. So you can see me now, and there's two displays of me because I am actually making both of these calls at the same time. Now, the video quality aspect itself, probably don't read into too much of that from this demonstration, because we are actually shadowing the endpoint anyway, so it won't give you a true reflection of the true picture of the video quality. But
So I'm
just
going to fast
look
forward
at the
this section just
task
to get to the
manager
point where we
within
create
the
the
virtual
Kiosk
desktop
shell,
itself.
as I
And if we
mentioned
just
just
look
before we started the video.
at the users, so currently I'm logged in as Dan, sorry, WVD admin.
I think we're getting a bit
And you
of
can
an
see
echo
here that
again.
Microsoft Teams, even though we are actually running this video call, is actually using very little resource on the Azure virtual machine. So this is a great benefit in reducing cost overhead with your CPU.
I think with that, Michelle, because of the time, it's not allowing me to fast forward, skip this part of the video. So I think what we'll do is just make this one available after the session so that everybody can see it at that point, if that's okay.
Absolutely, yes.
So yeah, that video
Yeah.
will show you how to set up the device in a Kiosk way of working, but we do also have similar videos available on YouTube anyway. So
Yes.
let's go back to the PowerPoint for now. And we come to the summary basically. So to summarize what we have covered today, basically Linux-based thin clients are as ever relevant. Let me show my camera again. Are as ever relevant and in hot demand. Could you try again, Siri? With ease of deployment and management. So Linux offers a lower price point or total cost of ownership. It also has a smaller footprint and is designed with security in mind. It's easy to set up and manage thanks to Tenzig Manager, and includes a simple and intuitive user interface. This is based on the platform being long established in the field of VDI and more recently adapted to DaaS for Microsoft AVD and Cloud PC. So consider Linux where these features are important and the feature set offered by the Windows equivalent is not necessarily required. So where features listed below are mandatory, a Windows-based client is preferable. And these can include where support for features such as remote apps that appear seamlessly displayed to the user alongside their locally installed apps are required. If collaboration support is extremely important, which it is currently, and as of now, platforms such as Microsoft Teams and Zoom offer AV redirection through Windows. Full port redirection, offering the greatest flexibility and wide support of various USB peripherals, either via USB redirection or other redirection methods for peripherals, including printers, scanners, graphic tablets, etc. And then familiarity from a Windows perspective for users. So due to the presence of the native Windows Explorer shell, particularly useful for remote apps mentioned above, where the apps are launched and present on the user's Windows-based desktop. So here you will find useful links to additional useful Tenzig content, which is mainly available on our YouTube channel. So from these, you'll be able to get access to videos covering NOS-M, our Zero client, also the Windows 10 IoT Enterprise devices. There's a few videos on getting those set up for AVD and managing them and configuring them. And then there's also the videos on the Tenzig Manager, which goes directly from installing the Tenzig Manager to managing your devices, and also best practices for remote deployment, etc. There's finally also the links there for Microsoft Endpoint Manager and Intune, which we covered earlier on as well. So a lot of content there, or links to be able to assist you get further information on any of these topics if you do wish to look into them further. There's also Microsoft guides available from Microsoft's documentation. So for some of the items, obviously, that we've been looking at today, I've put in here some useful links which will get you straight to those areas of interest on Microsoft's documentation portal. So before we wrap up and host the Q&A session, could we go to our final poll question, please, Michelle?
Sure can.
And this one will be for, would you like to receive a Tenzig demo device to test in your own environment? And again, the answers are A, yes, B, no, or C, maybe later. And for those of you who may be pondering this question in previous sessions, the most popular answer is normally A, which is for yes.
Of course.
But to be fair, from question one, question two, we actually had quite a lot of uptake of Tenzig devices anyway, didn't we?
This
So
is true. Yes.
always
Yeah.
room for improvement.
Yeah. All right. We'll just give people a few more seconds to answer. That demo device is no obligation, no hassle. 30 days, sometimes more if you need it to test in your own environment. I'm going to go ahead and close this poll question. Okay, wonderful. And we'll certainly reach out to anybody that had specific interests as well.
Excellent. Thanks, Michelle.
Mm-hmm.
So thanks everybody for attending this webcast today and for taking the time out of your days to do so. We hope it has been useful, and thanks to Michelle for hosting, and also for Kevin for joining and contributing too. Kevin will now join me again for a final Q&A session regarding today's presentation, but much of what we have discussed we have just scratched the surface with. So if you do have any questions afterwards, then don't hesitate to contact your local Tenzig team, and I'm sure they will be happy to help you further.
Wonderful. I know we had one or two questions that came up, if we have time to address. One was the subject of Windows 11 and just everything related to that in terms of this topic and versions. Kevin, I thought maybe you'd like to address that.
Yeah, sure. So not quite clear if it's Windows 11 on the endpoint side or AVD. If it's referring to the endpoint side, then as far as Microsoft are concerned at this point in time, the Windows 10 IoT 2021 image that we referred to during the webinar is the latest and greatest. As Stewart kind of touched on, that the IoT approach is all built around LTSC, the long-term service channel. So Windows 11 at the moment isn't on the horizon, but that's not to say, and we probably should call out here the fact that our Windows 10 IoT images are continually updated. So roughly around sort of anywhere between every 1 and 3 months, where we ship any sale devices or demo devices, they are updated with both the latest Windows updates as well as the latest MSRDC client that again we touched on throughout. So wherever there's any updates as far as the AVD client's concerned, they are continually updated into the images. And certainly on the AVD front, we do have customers leveraging both the Windows 10 and Windows 11 side of things. So hopefully that answers the question there.
There was another specific one related to Windows. If they buy a Windows-based thin client, do they also need to purchase a Windows 10 license, or is that included?
So that's it really is probably more a question in regards to what particular subscription that customer might be using. So yeah, really you would need to touch on the Microsoft representatives there in order to qualify what subscription you have to verify that particular point.
Thank you. For you, Stewart, something that was coming, maybe you touched on earlier actually, but just to go through again, of the window customers that Tenzig does have, what did the devices configured for accessing AVD or Windows 365 Cloud PC, or of those customers?
Yeah, so far, I mean, most of the interest has been around AVD. We have had some inquiries about Cloud PC, but generally speaking, most of the organisations that we are dealing with currently on the EMEA side in particular are surrounding AVD.
Yeah, and I think from the US perspective, it's a similar sort of percentage as well. It's mostly AVD. We are starting to see an increasing number of requests for Cloud PC, but it's probably, I would say, anywhere between a 75 to 80% split in the favour of AVD, and then the Cloud PC makes up the remainder, either in sort of 20 to 25. But how that sort of trend shifts over time, we'll see. But certainly from our perspective, it's really a moot point, really, from whether a customer leverages Cloud PC or AVD.
Okay. And then another question specifically related to the topic at hand. So Linux or Windows, Tenzig customers, which endpoints, what are they going with? What's the assessment?
Yeah, I can take that one. I think it's roughly fairly an even split at the moment. Certainly, with the whole collaboration piece, that is hotly in demand. So that does certainly shift straight into the Windows-based endpoint. But we do come across a number of deployments already that for example, could be mixed. So where they have, let's say, task-based workers who don't require Teams optimization or Teams, they could certainly leverage the Linux-based endpoints. And then they have any sort of knowledge-based workers who do require Teams on the Windows front. But again, it's approximately a sort of 50-50 split at the moment. And I think as we see the platform evolve further on the Linux front, as we've seen on our other sort of VDI platforms that we support, we would expect the percentage shift to sort of trend more towards Linux. So for our other VDI platforms that we support, we probably work more as a percentage of sort of, again, 75 to 80% in the favor of Linux, and 20 to 25 in terms of Windows. So again, we do expect that same trend to shift on the AVD and cloud PC front as well.
Wonderful. I just wanted to mention a few things before we wrap up, and then I'll give Stewart and Kevin if there's anything else you want to close with. It's interesting. Somebody asked what the poll answer was for our demo requests, and of the people that aren't already Tenzig customers, I just want to say a lot. So it's close to half. That was really great question. So again, the demo is 30 days. It's no hassle, no obligation. You can even go directly to Tenzig.com and fill out the free demo form. It's on the top toolbar. It's a quick and easy form. Happy to help you out there. Just again, I want to mention I will be issuing an email by the end of this week, if not the very latest, the beginning of next week. That will include who won the $200 Amazon gift card and who can't use extra cash, so to speak, these days. Even though you're spending on Amazon, it's still money. You will be able to find the full recording of the entire webcast on Tenzig YouTube channel. Again, same timing. As well as our video gallery on Tenzig.com. But to Stewart's point earlier in the webcast, we also piece out the separate videos that he's produced for us, and those will be going up on both of those venues as well. Again, no later than probably the beginning of next week. So it's been a pleasure. I know I certainly got an even better education and a lot of information. I don't know if Stewart or Kevin, you wanted to mention one other thing before we sign off.
There's just two more points, and unless you've got anything first, Stu.
No, not really. Just again,
Okay.
Say thanks to everyone for attending.
Yeah, I agree with that. Thanks everybody for your time, and apologies we have slightly overrun, but again, there was a hell of a lot of content to cram in. But just the two final points I wanted to call out, which you've referred to, Michelle, in the webinar panel, in the handouts. Again, all of the links that Stuart's referred to, they are in the PDF that's named Tenzig August 3rd, 2022 webcast. So that's the PDF to open, and that contains all of those links that Stuart included earlier. So again, that's in the handout section. If you do have any difficulties finding those, reach out to us afterwards. And going back to the earlier question about the Windows and Linux split, what we do typically find as well in the POCs is that a number of our customers will take both Linux and Windows so that they can test and try both platforms to really allow them to sort of do an acid test on both to figure out which platform's right. So there is the freedom and the flexibility there in the demo units, as well as again talking to us here at Tenzig so that we can understand your needs today and in the future to try and steer you into the right platform. So yeah, just thought it was important to add that. But other than that, that's all I've got. And again, thanks everybody for your time today, and thanks to you, Stuart and Michelle, for putting this great webinar together. I really appreciate it.
Yes, it was great. Thank you very much. And thanks again to everyone. And look for that information to come directly to you later this week or early next week, as well as on our Tenzig YouTube channel, and our video gallery. Have a great rest of your day, and we'll see you again. We've got another webcast coming up on September 14th with Jason Hudson, and you'll be seeing some information about that soon as well. Have an awesome rest of your day, and thanks for your time.
Thanks,
Have a great day,
everybody.
everyone.
Bye.